What are you waiting for? It's time to Thrive Loud.
Hey, Thrive Loud listeners, Lou Diamond here. I hope you're being safe and well. We're recording this on March 21st, 2020. Many of you are quarantined or left inside due to the coronavirus. And it's frustrating because there's not a lot of distractions. There's no sports activities going on, live events. So it's a little bit frustrating and a lot of people are getting a little stir crazy. Along those lines, we figured, well, entertaining people would be important. And hopefully this podcast will do that. An upcoming guest in a few weeks, actually, not even, about a week and a half, we'll have Evan Money on the program. After Evan Money and I recorded our episode, we had so much fun because we were talking about lots of different things in life, about life, leadership, and we both happen to like sports. And the only sport that seems to have any news right now is the NFL. So the two of us actually decided to just chit-chat a little bit and kind of do a little episode here because it might spawn into something a little bigger than just our Thrive Loud episode. So this is a special Thrive Loud episode focused on exactly that. Life, leadership, the NFL, and other sports. So sit back and relax to what we're going to call this episode Diamond Cuts, Money Talks, as myself, Lou Diamond, and Evan Money connect here on Thrive Loud. Welcome to a special episode. I'm Lou Diamond.
And I'm Evan Money.
And today we're going to focus on life, leadership, and the NFL, and other sports too. So here's the story. Evan and I met recently because he came on my podcast show, Thrive Loud. We totally hit it off. You're going to love his original episode. And the two of us just connected on these main things, life, leadership, football, and all the things going on in sports. And we recognized that this is something that the world needs to hear more about of. Really that higher level conversation about specifically a sport that we love, the NFL, but also a lot of lessons that we're learning from this and how we can carry the things we're seeing on the field or off the field and in the boardroom into your own business and into your own life to pursue all your pursuits and happiness and those things. And we're on the same page, are we not, Evan?
Absolutely.
I love it. So I think we should get started because we're recording this in late March and there's a lot of stuff going on. But we want to focus, I think, right now, the NFL is going through some crazy free agency. It's the only sports going on right now, Evan. It's the only sports. Okay, so let's just get some initial takes on this. Evan, how are you when you first heard about where Tom Brady, well, let's see this. When you first heard Tom Brady was not going to the Patriots.
Well, for the backstory in this, I was telling Lou off the air before we even got this crazy idea to do the show that I was 100% convinced, without a doubt, Tom Brady was coming to the Los Angeles Chargers, which is where I live, and ready to reopen the new stadium. The road was paved, the we had the parade scheduled, just so you know. I don't know if you're aware of that, but I got some inside with the mayor. We had the billboards ready to be unveiled. We already had Tom Brady Day ready to be named. He had he had the key to the city being carved. It was ready to go, Lou. Ready to go.
And those listeners need to know that I grew up loving the Chargers, mostly when they were in San Diego, but I still love them. I love the powder blue, and I was getting excited about it. This is a guy who's never really liked Brady that much because he's always it was almost like that, kind of like the New York Yankees in sports, where either you're a diehard Yankees fan and you love them, or they're like the evil empire and you hate them. And that's kind of what the Patriots were with Brady. But you can't not respect him. He's the greatest quarterback of all time. But so first announcement, when he says, I'm not going back to the Patriots, what was your reaction?
So, I mean, I had my whole conspiracy theory laid out because I looked at it from a life and leadership perspective, right? It was like, okay, what's going on with Tom Brady? So we had the clues, right? Okay, Tom's selling the house. And everybody was like, oh, yeah, well, they're just trying to get leverage and doing this and da-da-da-da-da. And I still remember there was a quote from Tom's dad 5 years ago, Lou, 5 years ago, who predicted this is going to end badly. So he already knew. And, of course, the Patriot way, and for all my Star Wars Mandalorian fans, this is the way, which is, hey, it's all about the team first, and every player is expendable, and every player needs to know that coming in. And that's why it's like, man, how come all these players left? How come they come in, they win a Super Bowl and they leave, or they come in? And Tom was the only one who stayed. And so I knew it was coming to an end. And my biggest tip-off, which I remember texting or emailing you, Lou, I thought when he made the announcement of his new production company here in Los Angeles, he's going to make movies, he's going to do this. And I was like, okay, that's it. Tom's coming to LA. He's already lived here before. It's all done. The kids are going to go to LeBron James' school. It's going to be perfect. But yeah, I was absolutely flabbergasted. I was not shocked when he's like, okay, we're not doing the Patriots. That was like, of course, I already knew that. But when they said the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, first I hit my head. I was like, there's no way. And then I was like, well, I remember telling Lou, I know he's going somewhere warm because if Giselle cannot spend time with her husband, and there's a life lesson here we'll get into, she is not going to do it freezing her rear end off. So it has to be warm. Henceforth, Tampa Bay.
And let's go with this. You have a good coach there in Bruce Arians. You've got two unbelievable wide receivers. Evans is so good. I remembered seeing him when he played at Texas A&M, and I'm like, this guy's not human. And that being said, I also think that it wasn't in the AFC might have been a factor there, in the sense that, maybe having to go up against the Patriots or those other foes, maybe this was something he was thinking. Well, I don't know. What do you think from a sports perspective? You think that had anything to do with it?
Yeah, well, I mean, everyone was convinced it was going to be AFC. They're like, AFC. It can't, who's going to, right? The same with Manning, right? And you don't want to relearn all these new defenders and da-da-da-da-da-da. But going back to the life and leadership portion, what people really need to look at is when it came out, everybody, publicly, Tom said the huge driver was being close to his family and his son, who lives in New York, the third son that people forget about, that he had, out of wedlock and all that stuff.
With Bridget Moynihan, correct?
Yes. So he wanted to be closer. And again, it's all about, mixing the families. And this isn't about, Tom's not a good father, blah, blah, whatever. Tom is Tom. I don't know him personally, so I don't know his fatherhood, but to say, hey, I'm willing to, go against all the trends, right? I'm going to relearn all these new defenders. I'm going to do all this stuff. I'm going to come to Florida, although no state tax is definitely an incentive. I can tell you that.
By the way, I'm thinking that might have been a thing, but I don't know if he's a resident yet, so we'll figure that part out.
Yeah. So you think about, just, again, from a tax perspective, what's 13% of $30 million? I mean, that's a huge incentive.
A lot of money.
Yeah, to play for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So again, with all of that, it's pretty interesting to say, hey, look, this is, a family decision saying, hey, I want to be closer to my son. And, from his bride's perspective of saying, hey, you know what, Tom, if you're going to play some more, and I wanted you to stop 3 years ago, but I'm not going to be lonely and cold. So we're going somewhere warm. So it was like, okay, one of these things. So it'd be very interesting to see now from the ego side, right? Like,
yes.
Okay, I'm going to prove to everybody that I'm not a system quarterback. I'm not of this. I'm not of that. And da-da-da-da-da. It's going to be – I mean, everyone already is talking about, okay, well, is it Super Bowl or bust for the Buccaneers and this and that? And I think Tom has done so much already. I think Tom's safe no matter what.
Well, yeah, this goes under my category. If you go back to when Joe Montana left the San Francisco 49ers and ended up playing – I think it was just a season or maybe a season and a half.
I think they did. No, they did like 2 or 3 with the Chiefs.
2 years.
They went to the AFC Championship and lost.
Yeah. And they made it to the playoffs. And we're talking here, maybe we're calling him a top 5 quarterback, I guess, Montana. I'm not going to play that game. We'll have that for another podcast episode. Yep. But this was a guy, like we only think of him as that San Francisco 49er quarterback. He had 20 years under his belt as a Patriots quarterback. We know that's who he is. We know that's what he's about. And I think what we're getting on this life and leadership thing, and specifically the leadership thing. Look, his ego's jumping out with a chance. Like, he's got one thing left to prove. Can he be successful without Belichick? Because that'll be the only thing they'll ever ask about this. But he's 40 plus years old. Whatever he does is gravy at this point. I do think it's interesting because you and I were chatting about this, and this is an interesting segue. Because for some guy that's been part of a system for a long time, and no one will question how great he is because his individual skills have always rise like cream to the top, which is what Brady's always done. Let's talk about someone who's kind of fallen off a little bit here.
Yes.
The Mr. Cam Newton, who I mean, maybe peaking too early. One of the greatest high school football players, Heisman Trophy winning college championship quarterback in the NCAA, or whatever they call it in college football these days. I don't even know what the NCAA
hard
takes
to keep track.
Hard to keep track. There are no sports being played. We have to live in the past. And then obviously taking a team to the Super Bowl. Was he MVP? He was an MVP that season as well. It's been a little bit downhill since then for a guy that's only played 8 seasons in the NFL. Evan, what's our lesson here about Cam Newton?
Oh, yeah, especially in the NFL, but also in life in general, as we're experiencing right now today in the midst of this virus, is everything changes like that.
Yeah.
And to think that you're immune to change and, oh, that's not going to happen to me. And, oh, look, I'm the face of the franchise and I'm this guy and this could never happen. I could never get sick. I could never get hurt. I could never lose my job. I could never, right? All of this stuff, like, oh, that can't happen to me, is just a perfect example of looking at Cam Newton. I mean, 2 years ago, Cam was the guy. You know, he was, I mean, everything, right? And if you could say, and we see this too, it just happened here in Los Angeles, getting rid of Todd Gurley, getting rid of some of these other people. It's like, wait a minute, 2 years ago, you say that's impossible, you know? So these faces of the franchise, and this goes back to a culture side, Lou, that I'd love for you to chime in on. I'm big on culture. So what I loved about Jerry Jones, and there's positive and negatives there, but I love what Jerry Jones did with Emmitt Smith. They had a parade, they had a parade. They shot off fireworks. They said, Emmitt, we love you. You're awesome. Thank you. But we're not going to re-sign you. But they did this big to-do, like, hey, we're sending you off with these great blessings. And then to see what Carolina's doing with Cam. Look, I understand from a culture perspective, hey, man, we don't know if you're strong enough. You know, we went all, ride or die last year with you, and we died. That's why we got rid of the coach and all this stuff. So I understand that we're going to transition out, but man, you got to throw the guy a parade. You got to do a 21-gun salute. You got to appreciate to say, Cam, thank you for what you did for us. But, we're going in a different direction. So it's not that they got rid of Cam. It's how they got rid of Cam. And then if you want to hearken back to the worst ever, which is going to be interesting what the Tennessee Titans do with their running back, but with the whole Steve McNair, I don't know if you remember this.
Yeah, of course.
Lou Diamond. Okay, but literally, this is a guy that gave, you talk about anyone gets a Purple Heart in the NFL, it was Steve McNair, right? Okay,
giving the Super Bowl.
But just giving up body parts, giving up his life, giving up everything for this team, right? I mean, any other player is, gone for 5 years to recover. And he's, okay, I'll limp on, fuse my legs so I go in one more play. I mean, the guy was this incredible, like Terminator-like road warrior. So gave his heart and soul. So as he's rehabbing to come back. And everybody's like, wow, McNair's the man. The owner talks to the general manager and he says, hey, Steve's working out in the building, right? And they're like, yeah. What happens if he gets hurt while he's working out? Oh, well, then we have to pay his entire contract. He said, lock him out. Some of you don't remember, but they actually locked him out. They took his key card away and his code didn't work. Like the next day, they didn't even tell him. He just shows up and his key card doesn't work. They're like, you can't come in anymore. I mean, talk about a culture disaster, right? So it's not that, these players are come and go and this whole culture of the NFL. It's how they do it from a culture standpoint. Can you imagine if the new owner did that? Like, look what they did with Manning, right? The owner, they cried together. And they said, Manning's going off. We love you, Peyton, but your neck's broken, so we're going to let you go, and we're going to take Andrew Luck because that just makes sense. But they cried together. They had the whole salute. So I want to get it from you, Lou, on this culture side of how you would have dealt with Cam and from a company position.
I have so many things to reply to this last tier here, Evan. Okay, so first of all, I'll go back to Jerry Jones, and it is definitely a balancing act with this individual, as he did a very good job with Emmitt back then.
Yes.
And I do remember that, but he did that because he had to. But then again, this is the same man who has yet to put newly anointed into the Hall of Fame Jimmy Johnson into the ring of fame or whatever it is in Dallas. So this is a guy who,
that's an ego lesson right there.
He went to college with this man, so they've known each other, and obviously this is no issue, and it's interesting, right? Because this is who he is. I'm from the New York area, listeners.
Oh, yeah.
Evan obviously is on the West Coast. And I had to deal with a lifelong dealing of George Steinbrenner, who, while he did many things, they're very similar, always trying to deal with the big names. What I will say is that there is a sense of loyalty that Jerry has had for certain people and respected most of those that that have fallen under his team and his brand. I when the ego shines so much, sometimes it's hard to see through it. There is no other owner GM in sports other than Jerry Jones, which is, and they haven't had a successful track record of him in that role.
Yep.
That being said, he's created a culture in there as a brand of the Cowboys that, as the players who are there, they are treated at a level that I think if you fit into whatever system it is, it seems to work. For the Cowboy fans, and they've got that connection there. They probably could do it a little better, but that could be an impossible person to change. That's my first point. Culture.
No, real quick. And a conspiracy side note, so people notice. Did you notice that once Jerry Jones got in the Hall of Fame, then all of a sudden it was okay for Jimmy Johnson to get in the Hall of Fame because Jerry got in first. Yeah. That's a whole nother. I'll just leave that one alone. But just want to point that out to everybody.
Jerry will do right if he honors Jimmy in some way, maybe this season after he's been put in, and when the NFL has games in the season, and there's a way that maybe Jimmy's featured, they could do those pregame stuff, or that would be smart and good branding for Jerry if he could swallow his pride. That being said, all that pushed aside and egos there, culture here is important. You're 100% right. Whether it's been done of late, it hasn't done so well. In organizations like the New York Giants, who have traditionally been phenomenal when it comes to their culture and how they treat their people and their leaders. And they would keep coaches and players maybe even longer than they needed to because of sense of loyalty. Pittsburgh, same way. Very few head coaches at Pittsburgh in the history of the franchise. And that's a sense of loyalty and family that they've created. And whether or not, there's been enough of a track record for Charlotte to have Carolina who have created something that really works well enough to have treated him good or bad or how they've done it. I think the changing of the ownership it's hard to deal with because we're dealing with a handoff versus someone who's been there and had that consistency. It would almost come off a little bit disingenuous if all of a sudden that owner showed the pride and love to Cam Newton, having never really had that relationship with him. So there's a part of me that's saying, look, it's a business and they are treating it as a business as such versus treating it as a family. Does that say that he doesn't deserve it? Well, I don't know Cam personally, but we were talking about the me and the we. And I think, Cam hasn't always been the one to put the team first in a lot of the way that he's played, and these injuries and the way that he plays. I mean, that style of, just being so big and physical, the hits and taking are obviously, have shortened his career or shortened the greatness of his career. And will we see it again? I don't know. Do we owe him the respect? I'm a big fan that every organization, no matter what you do, the best examples to recruit future people, to your point, will remember those things that they do badly. Not everyone will remember them as well because they'll flash money in front of you. But you want to be part of an organization that respects you before, during, and after you're playing the game.
Yes.
And I'll make a little comparison here. And it's been in the spotlight when games were being played. The New York Knicks organization, one of the most hated owners of all time is James Dolan, who's the owner of the New York Knicks, and he also owns the Rangers franchise. Hated because he's never won, and he's been treated as a guy born on third base, son of the cable billionaires system of the Dolan family. And he just, though, has managed to keep people around him for a very long time who have been in the Knicks organization. If you've played on the team or you've played in the organization, he's incredibly loyal to them. But they all work within the organization. They're supporters. They get jobs. He's kept people on probably way longer than they need to. Now, we don't know all the behind the scenes. Unfortunately, the results for Knicks fans have never such greatness. And there's something to be said there about the ownerships. Obviously, probably it's problematic in the way that he gets himself involved or doesn't. But what you do is when you create a winning culture, what the Patriots have done, what the Steelers have done, what all these organizations that have really found a way to keep their brand about winning is because they've created a culture that when you come in, you feel like you're part of a family. And I think that has always been the key to success in any company. And that's the key to success at these top teams that always show up. And now, it's funny with all the free agency and the jumping around, will that carry over to places that maybe had not had it? I don't know Tampa Bay's culture that well, but it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. And by the way, it'll be interesting to see what anything looks like, because it probably makes sense for us to talk a little bit about the fact that there's not a lot of games going on right now. There's really no sports going on here in late March with obviously coronavirus shutting down the NBA, the NCAA, the NHL, just about any sporting event, things being rescheduled and moved to months that no one's ever familiar with, from the Masters to the French Open to just about anything. We're in an unprecedented time that technically football is the only thing to talk about. So we have to harp on these leadership decisions. I want to, before we even get to some of our pre-scheduled stuff, have you thought that the leaders of these organizations, and I'm going to take Adam Silver from the NBA because that's the other sports that we talk about.
Yes, others.
He made a great decision. The minute that one player ended up with coronavirus, which was the player on the Utah Jazz, he just shut down everything. It's all pulled them off the court, shut down all games until whatever suspended, and everyone followed suit. He might have been the leader in communicating that. How did I know we're not as big on these other sports, but I thought it was actually really a great sign of leadership in that particular situation, because some organizations, some politicians, some other folks in other places haven't done as well as it relates to making the right decision to get a hold of something first.
Yeah, so Silver's been getting, and I've kind of watched his style, and I remember watching this address that he did a couple weeks ago when they had, word from the commissioner and all this stuff, and he told kind of his story coming up in law school. And he's like, if you would have told me in law school I'd been the commissioner of the NBA, I would have said you're crazy. He seems a little ahead of the curve for everybody, which is encouraging. I will say I don't agree with the decision, and this is where the crazy patriot Evan Money comes in. I'm all about the free choice. So if I'm David Silver, I would have said, hey, look, you know what? You're welcome to come to the games. You're welcome to sit if you want to. We're still going to play. The players can play if they don't want to or they want to. I still remember the whole Magic Johnson AIDS thing when it came out, and what do we do and what's going to go on and da-da-da-da-da. So because of this whole, and I'm going to call it what it is at this stage, is kind of this over, the classic, I love what ESPN does, overreaction Monday, right? So we're having overreaction flu virus, right? In this today alone, in the United States, roughly 300 people will die from the common flu. And no one has it. Yeah, right? And it's just like, okay, so I can see it that, hey, he was the first one to step up and make a decision. So I admire that. So I'm an Adam Silver fan. I don't agree with the decision. I would have rather said what people need now more than ever is a distraction, and they need, right? We want to cheer for something. We want to see some sports. Hey, again, I'm a Lakers fan, right? We're doing well. Let's keep the train rolling here. So there's a whole conspiracy theory that we can't let the Lakers win another championship, so we got to shut down the NBA. So there's
I want them to win a championship. I wanted to see. Look, I might not LeBron the person, but I respect him as a player, and he is so great to watch and so unbelievable. It would be nice, and I hope that they, through some rescheduling or some coming back to normalcy, that we get a chance to see it. I actually think it'd be really cool if the summer months happens to have basketball. And it's interesting because there's that push now for that the owners, and I'm blessed to. There was an NBA owner I reached out to back when I had my terrestrial radio show so long ago. That's why I sigh. I'm like, has it really been that long ago? It doesn't sound like it has been. So.
It's like, no, well, goodness gracious. So I reached out. I met him at one of these events, and I interviewed him, had him on my show, and I kept in touch. And he basically has been one of my mentors and was nice enough to mentor me. So rather than playing the name game and all that, but I remember talking to him about, hey, what do you think about the new schedule and some of the new stuff? And so, they were looking at, pushing the NBA into the summertime anyway. So this is going to be like their dream come true, because it's like, all right, well, let's see what it would look like having the NBA in the summer. This makes more sense. Get it away from the NFL, quit competing. I definitely think, like Silver says, he has to start it with pin drops, but the NBA season needs to be way shorter.
Yeah. So, or push it out later, like do it, let NFL get their games out.
Yep.
And start it in like late December on the holidays, and then move it into the other. I'm with you on that. I understand the unions and the number of games.
Yeah.
But this is a perfect segue.
Yeah,
perfect
exactly.
Segue.
Yeah.
Let's leave the other sports and go back to the NFL, because the collective bargaining agreement, the CBA, has been signed.
Yes.
So I'll be honest, I did not read it. But I think let's go through some of the key highlights of some of the things that they have added. We're adding the number of games per week. Are you happy or sad about that?
Yeah, and
per season.
Yeah,
Sorry,
that's the option. Yeah, and it's interesting because I have strong affiliations, but when the league was growing and at its peak, and when the NFL was actually using the Arena Football League, a lot of people don't know this, but there was a time when the Arena Football League was on the rise, and the commissioner was David Baker, who is now the gold jacket guy who knocks on the door. And if you thought Andre the Giant was big, you need to meet David Baker. He is the largest. He will dwarf anyone in professional wrestling. He will dwarf any offensive lineman. He is probably one of the largest human beings in the world. And you don't just lose your hand when you shake his hand, you lose your whole body. Like, you can fit in the palm of his hand. Just a big guy. He was a great commissioner. And as the Arena Football League was on the rise, the goal was that the Arena Football League would kind of be this, minor leagues of the NFL. And so a lot of NFL team owners were coming in.
Right.
Everybody was, the co-branding, Elway had a team and Bon Jovi had a team, and things were on the rise. And the challenge was the skill sets didn't fit. They're much different skill sets for that indoor arena football style. But what Arena Football did, they were the ones that got the 18-game season first.
Yep.
So they got those 18 games to say, see, look, it is possible. It can work. 18 games is where it's at. And it was a financial thing. So so ultimately that's where the NFL wants to go, is 18. They're only going to get 17. And it's an option, but they're gonna exercise.
It ends
that.
up being it's 18 weeks of time though, because there'll be the bye weeks, I guess. Still put in there. And I'll be honest, preseason football was a waste. I mean,
it is, and they always say the first two regular season games are preseason games anyway.
Correct.
So I'm with you. Yeah, 17 makes sense. Mathematically, it's tough on who gets the extra home game and all that stuff. So
they've been dealing with that in other sports for a long time, and only those that are like, oh, we need the perfect equality. But guess what? You still have people are afraid to expand the NFL because you have a perfect 16 and 16. Yeah, it works out really well in each one of the conferences.
Yeah.
I'll say this. Look, I'm just glad that, with all the things going on here with COVID-19 across the country, across the globe, to go into some kind of lockout, or know that there wouldn't be sports for a reason that did not involve a virus, that would have been really frustrating for a lot of us. I think it's already bad enough that there is nothing on. And I feel that that's maybe the conversation on the way that we should lead this, because I thought about something really cool. One of the things that we talk about this time of year, which everyone gets excited about, because we're about a month away from the NFL draft.
Well, no, before you go there, I gotta hit the rewind. Rewind. I want to ask you from a big CBA picture, because really this comes to culture, this comes to life, this comes to leadership, this comes to whether you're an entrepreneur, business owner, or you're the CEO, or you're in the middle of just grinding away at a company. This whole mindset of labor versus management.
Yeah.
Right? Just your reaction just says,
I'm gonna get there, but keep going.
Okay. So you have labor versus management. And then what's interesting is just the name of this is hopeful, right? The CBA, Collective Bargaining Agreement. Okay. So how many organizations could actually use that kind of language? Hey, let's have a collective bargaining agreement, right? But there's this whole thing of labor versus management. But what a lot of NFL fans don't realize with the new CBA, and I'll round up just to make the math easy, it's $200 million is the hard cap. So if you're an NFL owner, the most you can spend on paper is $200 million for that year for all of your players. And it's expanded now. It's 55 and you get to dress 48 and all that stuff. But you got 55 players. The most you can spend is $200 million. What a lot of fans don't know is that there is a minimum cap. And that actually goes back to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're the ones that caused that in the 70s. But there's a minimum cap. And it's roughly, again, rounding, using rough numbers, an NFL owner has to spend $180 million on his players. Has to. He has to. So this whole myth of labor versus management, like, oh, this owner doesn't want to pay his guy. It's like, they have to pay their guys, okay? They have to spend $180 million. So it's just how they want to pay them. But you've got this whole, again, this labor versus management tension. So I want to talk with you, Lou, as someone who's inside the corporate world, who does this as a culture guy. How you, as an NFL owner, I want to see how you would view it from both sides, from a player and from a management side. Give me your take, because this is worth $10 billion right here, Lou. Let me hear it.
If only they would pay us that money for this broadcast. Okay, so I want to go back to a union comment. I worked on Wall Street for a long time, and there was a crazy amount of hours that we had to put in around and before the financial crisis. And one of my colleagues, as kind of a joke, because we worked in the interest rate swaps derivative desk, which is a lot of complicated words. But what you need to know here is he actually made a joke and he put up a sign that said, and he used the address, we're the 2324J union, which was poking fun of that we were like the swaps union of America, that we should unionize because we were being overworked by our employer. It's kind of a little bit of a joke, which is not a very good joke because we were Wall Street professionals being paid very highly amount for what we want. Well, but not different from NFL union players. There was an issue that the guys who cleaned the entire building were part of a very large union. It was a union building. And amazingly, the area where our desks was not cleaned for a full week because there was this little sticker and a sign that was on there because they were so offended. This was amazing. All right. Now it was a bad joke and bad taste. And I remembered sitting down, having to talk to the building manager and apologizing with my other colleagues for what was a bad joke. Anyway, but I did get to see union tension and union beliefs that there's been the original reason for a lot of unions was needed based on poor working conditions and all those things that took place with the Teamsters. And you could watch every Jimmy Hoffa movie ever made about what eventually turned into corruption of unions, right? And unions, as we know, have not been good in many industries and many instances. It's killed certain industries.
Correct.
And it's hurt them. And the general idea, look, these players, these are the employees, these are the workers who are putting their bodies and their lives on the line, want to have rights and don't want to be treated as such. Now, it's hard because we can't distinguish them as players because they're all paid so much money, where $180 million is being spent no matter what to pay them, right? Mm-hmm. This is a crazy world that we live in, that you have to deal with these types of numbers, and that's just what it is in their sport. But there's something to be said here about how to work together. And if you look across all the major sports, I've always found it amazing of how certain unions in certain leagues had so much more power than other unions, the ability to demand strikes and get the things that they want. How the Major League Baseball union has been so strong to lock in and guarantee salaries for multiple years. I mean, they're still playing Bobby Bonilla in the New York Mets. This is 30 years after the man's swung a baseball bat, and I'm not even kidding. The NFL and all these organizations, I think what is interesting in the oxymoronic term of collective bargaining agreements, when you're dealing with the number of zeros that these players are dealing with, it is really hard for the regular person to understand it, or even those that are in other unions that appreciate it. But let's understand one basic thing. Unions are there to protect the rights of the employees. And it's a good checks and balances with owners who can take advantage of it. And that collective bargaining agreement in principle is a wonderful concept that is supposed to look and see, well, we don't want one to be taking too much advantage of another and another not to be taking the other way. And that's what it was meant for. Let's throw aside corruption. Let's throw aside poor management. Let's throw aside strikes and labors and transit workers. You can go on and on and on, and all the politics around these unions that have unfortunately cluttered headlines. To your very good point, this is exactly what a lot of organizations could benefit from. I'm not saying to unionize them, but to recognize that agreement and that handshake. That's the connectedness. Yes. Does it have to be a term and a contract over 10 years with as many zeros as this one is? That's not the point. The main point is the coming to the table and trying to work on what makes sense, what makes the most sense for an organization to work well, specifically when you become that large and you have that many bodies that you're dealing with. Whether you need to be in a union or not, to me, is not relevant. I think the idea of collective bargaining or connecting with organizations in its principle is a great idea. And I will stand off my pulpit on that topic. And that's my thoughts on the whole concept of collective bargaining and where my brain's at.
Yay. And then I'll just chime in real quick. I would have loved to see, again, with this whole Corona thing, is a collective bargaining agreement to say, hey, look, if you want to go outside, go outside. If you want to go talk to people, talk to people. If you want to do this, do this. It's your option. It's your right to do this rather than this global panic of just, so I would have loved to see a CBA as far as, because, I mean, you look at if you want to go full, like what's the next step, right? Is it going to be martial law, right? Like, are we going to have,
it's not, I'm going to give my political, it's not going to be martial law if people start acting a little more responsibly. I mean, you see the people on the beach in Florida. I mean, I know this is I know that it's spring break and I know kids want to go out and I understand that most people will be fine with whatever, the flu or the virus. I'm totally with you. But there's a lot of people catching this stuff and a lot of people dying. And if we just got to get control of it so the hospitals don't overwhelm, I get it. I don't know. I'm with you a little bit. Overreaction, underreaction, but we'll see. Okay. What a world we're living in, man. It's
yes.
Great.
Yes.
Let alone lines around the block at your local supermarket. Okay. I'm going to shift to our last topic of the day here, Evan, because I think this is going to be the funniest one of the day. There's a draft coming up in the NFL.
Yes.
Now, the draft a long time ago was a very small operation. Like you said, it was in a smoky room and it was like a bunch of the owners getting together and they would talk about who they want and they'd make these picks and who knows how kosher this process was. And it's literally turned into city-filled events. Last year in Nashville, there were more concerts on the main strip in Nashville as they did the draft right on the water. I actually saw them setting up the whole stage and everything, visiting a university with my daughter the week before, and could not get over the effort into it. And this year, it was going to be in Vegas.
Dude, on the water, they're going to boat the players in. I saw that. I was like, again, it's so funny because I was like, you know what? They may be going too far with this. I'm like, it's just a draft. And I know you may remember, Lou, harken back a couple years back, Pepsi did a whole launch on and I remember Rich Eisen, are we really having a soda draft? It was like one of those moments like, we're going to boat the people over on the water, have the fountains going off like, oh, we just drafted this guy. And again, none of these players have ever played it down to the NFL. I love the show. I love the whole thing, but I'm like, I think they were going too far with this.
They've overdone it. But now, because of COVID-19 and a lot of the restrictions and social distancing and the cancellation of all these events, I don't know if it's been officially announced yet. We can go check this out. We know that they're not all gathering in Vegas in late April for this event, all the way it used to be like at all these big city events like I've just described. So are we going to get to a point that a bunch of these owners are in a virtual Zoom room with like cigars in the background, like posting stuff up? And I love how you said it. Is it going to be like the Pope? Like, a bunch of cardinals go into a room and then you're going to find out, okay, here's who we drafted.
Yeah, well, that's how it used to be, right? Nobody knew until the next day and they announced like, okay, here's who we've drafted. And there was like a little snippet on page 8 of the newspaper, right? Like, here's the people that got drafted. So yeah, the virtual smoky cigar room.
That's what it is. And by the way, could you imagine like if they did it like this, where everyone was virtual and you could like stream in and watch like the results or something? I can see it. I can see it. I've got it now. It just came to me. So, okay, think like,
CNN, Fox News, think how they do the election, right? Like they got the states colored and okay, we got this many votes. I think it's going to be like real time on NFL Network and ESPN. Like, we're waiting for the results. Here we go. Dun, 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 dun. Boom, so-and-so. Ah! Right? Like, and then you get their reaction, kind of like they kind of like they do it now, but it's going to be more that secret, like, okay, the vote's in. We don't get to see it, and you don't get to hear the commissioner say it, but it's just like this.
Maybe the commissioner's just standing at a podium with a camera, and they just keep passing him everything.
Although I will tell you now, as the commissioner, again, there's pros, cons, and all that stuff. But as the commissioner, I can tell you, he and his family are so happy that he doesn't have to get booed now in front of everybody. He's like, at least I don't have to hear it when I announce people. There won't be any boos on the Zoom draft.
So somebody made a comment and said, maybe this was this curse by somebody like a diehard Oakland resident, right? Because here the Raiders have picked up and moved to Vegas, which just for the record, and I know for those Oakland Raider fans, I apologize, but
no, you have to say it right. You have to say the Raiders.
The Raiders. Okay, so we'll do my best Chris Berman and go, the Las Vegas Raiders sounds so good. The Vegas Raiders to me sounded like that's what it should have been the whole time. Pirates, Vegas, gambling, it's Sin City. It all makes sense to me. I can't believe it hasn't happened sooner. And it's not that far away. The Oakland fans will make the trek to it. But I think someone put a little voodoo hex and said, there's no way we're going to end up having that draft over there. They're not going to have everything on time. We're going to delay this. We're going to create the virtual smoky draft room.
Yes. Well, no, I've got a whole, and we could go super deep. And I'll touch it on here. Because as born and raised here in Southern California, I remember when the Raiders came here, I remember going to the facility. You could hang out the facility. They basically just took over a middle school, is what they did. I remember at one time, my buddy and I went over there. We actually broke into the facility and ran around on the field and played around during the offseason. It was great. I remember smelling Al Davis. So we waved to Al in his Cadillac. He was a little scary, so I didn't want to go talk to him. But, hey, Al, how you doing? He's like, yeah, one of those. So, have that whole Raider mindset and all that stuff going on. But what's interesting, here's my take. We're going to go super deep, then we'll get back to the draft. So I believe that because of who Al Davis was, because of how he got the Raiders, what he did to the Raiders, there's a lot of Jerry Jones in Al Davis.
Yeah, totally.
So because of everything that he did, the simple truth is Al Davis was the Raiders.
Yeah.
And there's pros and cons in this, Al Davis is a perfect example of someone who is, the little kid from the Bronx who never matured, sadly. So you look at this just scared little boy in an 80-year-old man, crusty bodied, is what Al Davis became. So small and petty, but yet, the big heart. You hear the two different sides. But for what he did for that team of professional football, Al Davis was the Raiders. He was the pirate on the side of the helmet, right? Totally. He was the rebel. He was the guy. There was a lot of people don't know this, the other sports, but a lot of people don't know when the late, great Dr. Buss, when he bought the Lakers, there were no such thing as cheerleaders in courtside seats.
Oh, yeah.
He invented that. He said, I'm going to put seats on the courts, and then I'm going to invite all the Hollywood people to sit there so it'll look cool. And I'm going to put cheerleaders here, and you can't stop me. And Al Davis had a lot of that. He was the rebel. He was like, hey, man, we're going to use what John Wooden's used. We're going to use the full court press. Al Davis invented press coverage. A lot of people don't know that. He invented the press coverage. Al Davis was, man, we're throwing it deep, baby. We're going to take what we want. We're going downhill. He invented the vertical passing game. So I believe that the Raiders, the NFL should have buried the Raiders franchise with Al Davis. And there's only one old AFL franchise that hasn't been resurrected. That's the Houston Oilers.
Well, and they are the Tennessee Titans, right?
Yeah.
But when they came back with Houston, they went with the Texans.
Yeah. So the Oilers is still that laying out. So my thought was, hey, look, come back to Los Angeles. There's a lot of oil in LA. A lot of people don't know that. There's still oil things going down here. That,
I'm gonna put a little I'm gonna put a little pin on this because I do have some info on this. When they remember, they're very good at giving the city back what it's supposed to be. When the Colts left one way to Baltimore, they got the Ravens back. When Cleveland came back, Houston, same thing. They're very loyal to the cities and the fans. When the Houston Texans, though, were coming up, that was the first question, and the Texans did not have a problem releasing the Oiler name, but political correctness, not associating with just the oil, was actually one of the reasons, and there was this sense of bigger pride. So I do know that like the Mustangs was a potential name, which one of the USFL names. And the Texans won in a vote. They let the city of Houston vote for it. Yes, it was but they would have brought the Oilers back. But with that thought, you wanted to have the Oilers come back.
But here's my thought. Resurrect the last franchise, right? And just, the Raiders have to be buried with Al Davis because that is just what he was. Now, we're not going to take, obviously, Al Davis's son who appeared out of nowhere, right? Nobody knew he had a son until, right? It was like, poof, where'd he come from, right? That's a whole nother conspiracy theory, right? Like, who's Mark Davis, right? Where'd he come from? So Mark still gets the franchise. A lot of people don't know this too. Mark Davis had the paperwork and was ready to sign. He was going to sell the team to AEG. A lot of people don't know this. The paperwork was done, printed, all the lawyers were high-fiving, we're getting paid, like you Wall Street guys, Lou. They're like, yeah, man, we're in. And Mark Davis at the last minute backed out because AEG was going to own the Raiders. And that's why I was like, it'd be perfect. So they would rebrand it, new team, new everything. A lot of people don't know AEG owns the Kings and all that. So they understand sports, and they started the MLS and now have built it to what it is. So the AEG knows what they're doing. It would have been perfect. It all made sense, right? And then Mark decided to be the pirate and keep the team, right? So my thought was, hey, you still get the franchise, Mark, but you just name it something else. You can have the Oilers or do something else, because what Al did was just so Al Davis. Like, the Raiders had to be buried with Al Davis. And some Raiders fans get it. Other Raiders fans like, you're crazy. But that was my thing. Like, just, Al Davis, Raiders, born, died. Okay, now we have this new franchise, new ownership. But that's my little Raiders ADD segue for you.
Evan Money, good to catch up, man. Good to talk. Life, leadership, and the NFL and other sports too.
Yes.
I think we got to call this Money Talks. Diamond Cuts.
Diamond Cuts and Money Talks. There we go.
Diamond Cuts, Money Talks. We'll figure it out.
Diamond Shines. Come on. Diamond Shines and Money Talks.
I kind of like the little bit, like the Money Talks. It has the talking thing, the Diamond Cuts. I think it works. It's got something.
Yeah.
You know what? We'll play around with it. Maybe we'll let the listeners figure it out. But
we could do that. We could let the Houston people vote. We could do that.
We could put it on the ballot for everything else. Well, listen. Always a pleasure to connect with you. Always great to talk about these life and leadership lessons. I want to wish everybody who's listening out there to be safe, be well. Hope everyone stays healthy, does what they're supposed to be doing, and keep thriving onward and upward.
And remember, life is tremendous.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Check us out on the web at thriveloud.com and follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at Thrive Loud. And check us out on the Good Pods app at Thrive Loud, where you can follow, listen, and connect directly to Lou and all of the Thrive Loud episodes. Thanks for listening.